We should be all set. All the panelists are unmuted, and all the panelists are unmuted, and everyone else should be muted. If you have a question, please raise your hand to submit a question via the system. First, I'd like to thank everyone for getting together today to join us for our NCA panel discussion, the special event Know-How. And I'd like to introduce our panel members and have them give a short introduction on themselves. First, we have Tracy DeJong.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy, and I have worked with Metro Connections for 22 years. And if you're calculating, I was 3 when I started, just so you know. And we are the largest destination management company in the Midwest, which means under one umbrella, we have 4 divisions. So we handle tours and transportation, conference services, production services, and event planning. And we have a huge 35,000 square foot warehouse for props. Our headquarters is here in Minneapolis with a satellite office in Orlando, Florida. We handle meetings and events, very small ones to extremely large ones all around the world. With our largest, probably it was here in Minneapolis, it was Alcoholics Anonymous with over 65,000 people in attendance. I personally work for all 4 divisions, but I have a primary focus with the tours and transportation. And I just want everyone to know 2 of my very favorite things I've ever done for Metro is I travel with an annual leadership conference of high school students. There's 6,000 high school students that we travel with, and I've been traveling with them for 12 years. And my other favorite thing is familiarization tours that are done for the local Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all the other convention and visitors bureaus. And that's me.
Great, thank you. And next, we have Sheila Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sheila Johnson, and I am the founder of Simplicity Concierge, which is an event and life management business. And we provide services to entrepreneurs, executives, companies, and also individuals. But our niche has been in the nonprofit world, managing and overseeing currently 3 annual fundraising events and galas. There's a need in the community for that. With so many volunteers on a nonprofit, there needs to be one person making sure everything is carried through. I have been in my business for I'm in my 9th year. I was in corporate America for 23 years, and after something major life-changing in my life, I really strive to find something that I was really passionate about, and I love what I do. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sheila. Next we have Terry Thomas.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us and taking the time to be here. I am Terry Thomas, Director of Sales for Old Town Trolley Tours and the DC Ducks in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been with Old Town Trolley for, going on 15 years. So when I started, I actually started by creating the processes of what we do in our charter department, along with marketing us on the East Coast. I handle all the networking. I handle dealing with wholesale tour operators. And, I handle all of our advertising. And I do all of our event planning for our local DC office. So I actually handle 2 sides of it. I work directly with the event planner, from a wedding planner to corporate events, and also handling the event planning here in our office for all of our employees. So thanks again.
Thank you, Terry. Next we have Kimberly Hubner. Kimberly, did we lose you? Or did I not unmute you? Kimberly, are you there?
Oh, hello?
There. I'm sorry, I didn't unmute you. I muted the wrong Minnesota person. There you go.
Oh, no problem. Hello, everyone. I'm just approaching my 1 year with Big O's Management. I am at the B at the Calhoun Greenway and the Calhoun Greenway. I have 539 apartment homes that I do all the resident events, newsletters, social media, and working on getting discounts and really just connecting the residents to the uptown Minneapolis and Minnesota. I have worked for 14 years in the group sales department at Valley Fair, did all the team building, the school group events, and then the employee events that occurred there, covering half of Minnesota and both of the Dakotas. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you. And next we have Jill Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Jill Vaughn. I'm the group sales manager at the History Theater, and I've been at the theater for 9 years and in the group sales position for 7 of those years. And mainly I work with school, adult groups, any kind of group you can imagine that comes through the doors of the theater. I help get their time at the theater set up. If they ever want to have a special event pre or post show, I also take care of any of those events. I have helped with many type events that we have here at the theater, from dance parties, tailgating, opening night, silent auctions, all of that. And then as a part-time job, I work out at the Minnesota Zoo, and I'm an event I work in events out there and execute day of for weddings, corporate events, and birthday parties. And thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jill. Next we have Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Pashati, and I'm with CBRE. I, for many years, was with Carlson Real Estate and Carlson Hotels, and I did mainly concierge work for Carlson Real Estate, planned all the buildings events for the tenants, and in my current role with CBRE, I'm the 5-star worldwide manager and the 5-star, and I'm also the concierge and event planner. The 5-star program is a program that CBRE Global Investors has cultivated for top-notch quality service in their buildings to mimic the Four Seasons 5-star service that their guests receive. So I'm responsible for the concierge services. We have a 5-star center, which is a conference center, and I manage that entire center. I plan and execute our yearly program of building events and assist tenants when they're planning their own events. We have a green space, and we've activated it, and we call it the Turf Club. So our tenants have started to do events out there. So I assist them with that and guide them for whatever they need. And if it's an event in my building, I plan it. Oh, and then I've also been part of the Minnesota chapter for many, many years, being on the board of directors, chairing the fundraiser. I've been around for a while.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Prior to the webinar starting, we had a chance for participants to submit questions for our panel. So right now I will go through a list of questions, but again, if you have any questions that come up from the attendees, please feel free to enter them in the chat section and we will get to them. So for the panel, the first question, what type of food do you recommend for stretching a budget and getting the most bang for your buck? Anyone? Tracy?
Sure. I can jump on that one. I did some questioning in our office as well, and usually in that case, almost all these answers, the answer is depends on the budget. But in this case, we think the answer is probably heavy hors d'oeuvres, finger food, something that is not passed.
Great. Sheila?
I found also when it comes to galas or larger events, appetizers can be more costly. So a sit-down dinner with a salad paired with, a meat entree and a couple sides with dessert can be more cost-effective.
Hey, Kimberly?
I was just going to say a buffet where they are typically getting up and serving themselves with a lot of variety and different salads and side dishes added on, and then usually doing 2 to 3 meats so that you have that variety, and looking at cutting them up small, where maybe for ribs, just having, 2 ribs instead of, 4, things like that. And then also just being sensitive to dietary needs.
The next question, I'm sorry, Tracy?
Well, I was just going to say, another thing as far as saving money goes is to have somebody at that buffet and possibly serving people like one dessert rather than people being able to choose 3 or 4 or 5, especially when it comes to younger groups.
Heather?
I know that in past experiences, it depends on the venue, what works best for them. It's totally, not my particular plan. Well, maybe it was, but when I was planning my wedding, I wanted a plated meal, and she said that the buffet meal, which was delicious, would actually be a better value, would work better for them. So I think that each venue depends on what they do best and how they can execute it. And I think that will depend on what you do for how you can stretch it. But I know in my own experiences in my conference center, a lot of finger food just works better. And if people just go and pick as they want, and depending on the length of the meeting, that's usually how it can go.
Next question, how do you determine the fire code restrictions and capacity for a space, especially when it's not publicly noted? Kimberly?
I always ask that question, and the person that if you are going off-site, they'll usually have that capacity, which the capacity is usually, I found, set with the fire code, taking that into consideration. So always asking to whether or not the seating, and then if it's going to be where you're doing round tabletops that people are standing, there could be a difference in the amount of people you can have in that room. So I just always ask.
Just out of curiosity, has anyone in the panel had issues before with fire code restrictions and capacity?
No.
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 Okay.
No.
I think the closest we ever came possibly was for the Republican convention, and some of those venues in the late night hours when the delegates were at different restaurants around town.
So based on your experience, what's the best way to handle the serving of alcohol? Jill?
With a glass.
Definitely, I would say to have a light, make sure that you've got somebody that's a trained bartender and has the license to serve the alcohol. Whether or not that's at your own space or I know a lot more caterers are offering that service too.
Heather?
I just actually had to deal with this. I have a new tenant who's planning a grand opening, and they were questioning about if they should just have the alcohol sitting out and people can serve themselves, or if they had a bartender. And they chose to hire a bartender because the bartender could cut off the guests, because these guests are CFOs, CEOs, and they didn't want to tell them no because that might jeopardize their business. So they actually chose to go with the bartender and put that responsibility on the bartender, and then the insurance is covered with that, and it takes the liability away from them.
Kimberly?
Yeah, I certainly take myself out of that element because of the fact that, I do want to be the one that's mingling and meeting and greeting for my residents. So always either hiring somebody or designating someone. And I really like the idea of tickets so that, you can figure out, usually in my past work experience, that, they figured how many per hour, and so a lot of times it was just giving out tickets, and that way then, that assures how many drinks people are getting.
Sheila?
I was going to say preferably the venue is who will do it, but if it's at a private home, I will often ask the caterer if they can bring in somebody. That way it is on them. I had this situation for a large New Year's Eve party, 150 people in a home, and my caterer brought in 2 people, and we also provided transportation for them. And if you have, as an option, and if you have the same people serving, you can kind of gauge on how much people are drinking, where if it's self-serve or that sort of thing, it's hard to tell.
And Tracy?
Yeah, we just have changed our policy as well at Metro Connections when we're using especially transfers on motor coaches or mini coaches or whatever. The client has to provide the alcohol themselves. Obviously, we can help put it on the vehicle, but we don't purchase it, and it's kind of up to them for delivery on the coaches and things as well, and it's all the liability issue.
That goes perfectly into our next question. If there is an open bar provided, is there a direct liability to the event host in the case of a guest overindulgence? Sheila?
Again, I go back to this one event we had. It was in a home. They provided the alcohol. My caterer brought in a couple of bartenders. The only concern there is the client did not want to card people in a private home, so we had asked her beforehand to ensure that nobody underage is coming to get drinks. And then again, providing and the the caterer had the liquor license. So that all works perfectly, but then also as another insurance is offering that transportation home is key also. It's hard to know sometimes where the line is.
Jill?
Yeah, and pretty close to what Sheila said. I think, if you have the bartender is the one that's, if they're the ones that are being able to pay attention, they're the ones that will be held liable, whether or not they carded or overserved somebody in the case of when we've done any events here. So.
And Kimberly?
I would say I have added to my information for my invites that the residents need to bring their IDs, and all people will be ID'd. In my past experience as well, there was a letter sent out and posters sent out that companies could put up, and that only protected the catering staff so that they would just not serve if somebody did not have their ID, and that protected them. And then, yes, they would definitely be responsible for cutting off if anyone had too much.
In your experience, is the service of alcoholic drinks allowed on most chartered transportation vehicles? Terry?
So it's actually the regulation of the insurance company, and that is an absolute no.
Okay, great. What do you do when a customer requests that then?
We tell them that they can have drinks before and after, but not on the vehicle. The issue stands that if the vehicle gets into any form of contact with another vehicle, the driver ends up being fully responsible for whatever is inside, even though he may not be partaking in the festivities. If there is any alcohol on board, they consider him drinking and he would be arrested.
Okay. Tracy?
Yeah, and according to my office in Minnesota, it's okay with our transportation as long, but we cannot provide the alcohol as our company, and otherwise we'd be liable. But that's a Minnesota deal.
Next question for the panel. What's the most common obvious mishandling of food that could be dangerous to attendees' health if eaten? Terry?
Oh, sorry, I meant to lower my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't lower it for you.
Okay.
Kimberly?
The one that I've heard the most has probably been with meat, and then also with dietary concerns. And so, I think more places are providing the information to what is in and what ingredients, either beforehand and making sure that people know that they can ask on that buffet what ingredients are in each of the food items, or at least to have that handy in case somebody does come up during the event to ask. I just think with people gluten-free and peanut allergies and things like that, it is becoming more prevalent.
Tracy?
For our situation is we try to label all items on any buffet that we have. We label what they are and what's in the particular unit, I guess. And quite often, I think they just mentioned it, if we have menus, at the table, we'll include that information on the menus.
And Sheila?
And I'd like to add just about how much food at one time is put out as far as food safety for temperature and being left out too long. If I'm doing, normally if I hire a caterer, they know how much, food can be left out before it needs to be thrown. If I'm doing a party where I'm bringing in the food, I'm always real cautious about if not putting a large amount out and just replenishing so things stay refrigerated.
What is your most prized tip for a successful event? Tracy?
I think I'd answer that to say, truly know what your client's goal is. Truly know, do they want a party? Do they want a team building event? Is there a special message that they're trying to get across? I think if the event planner and the client understand each other and know what that goal is, it will be successful.
Jill?
I would definitely say, this is a no-brainer probably, but organization and having, if you have volunteers or other staff members helping you out, making sure that there's a very well-delegated plan in place so you're able to easily delegate to other people.
Terry?
I agree with the first panel member. The thing when I deal with our inside events, that if I didn't know their eating habits and had small plates or hors d'oeuvres, which I had experienced that at the very beginning, it made for a very sad party, and people talked about it for years. When I realized they liked their meat and potatoes and were very happy. So, yes, that's so true, to know your clientele, how when you're putting the event together, what type of food or the heaviness of it really, because they could like certain like meat or not want meat at all, but then are they eaters or light eaters, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Sheila?
So I agree with all of that. Those were things that were on my list, really getting to know your client and your audience. Timeline, checklist, and budget and staying on track are really important. But one of the main things that I always remember or try to do and remember is always stay calm. There's always going to be things that might happen at an event that are unforeseeable. Things don't always go perfectly. But in the back of your mind, knowing that your audience, the guests there, do not necessarily know how things are supposed to go. So keeping that in your mind and staying calm is really works well.
Can the panel share what are some new trends for events that they've noticed? Tracy?
Well, there's a few things. As far as beverages go, the beer pairings are really big right now, almost bigger than the wine pairing situations. Team building is still popular, but right now I think that our corporate social responsibility events are probably the biggest, the CSRs, where the teams come in and maybe build a bicycle or something. It's a race to the finish line, and then at the end that bicycle gets donated to the homeless shelter or something to that effect. So I think those give-backs are probably the biggest right now.
Kimberly?
What we're calling in our resident community pop-up events. So just trying to do some more spur-of-the-moment things. The weather's nice. Let's get a group together and go walk the lake, So just being able to have different things available quickly as far as just little incentives and, decide that, well, we're going to do muffins and do a morning muffin giveaway as part of an event. Also here in the community is incorporating pet events has been popular.
Sheila?
So in addition to all of the great things that Tracy said, and I think Kimberly, thinking about when you're going to have your event is really important because people are so busy. So really even like a happy hour event when people get off work for an hour or two, those are really popular because then people can still carry on with their evening if they have other things to go to. So really just gauging, a time when people, it's just hard. There's so many galas out there. There's so many, events to pick and choose. So the timing of the event is important as well.
Terry?
So what I'm finding is people want to do things outside of the box. So in D.C., you have all your monuments and museums. And when they get here, they see that standard, but then they want to do what no one else does. So you have to become really creative. And I'm seeing that when they book charters, they'll do a standard tour for a short amount of time and make stops, such as Coco Sala, which they specialize in incorporating chocolate into everything they cook, from the entrees to the dessert. So they make custom hot chocolate. So we'll, stop for hot chocolate in the wintertime in the middle of the tour, or take them to a fancy bakery for cupcakes or something like that, but something that they've not done before or something different.
Sheila?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, that's okay. I did it too. So as a panel, how do you find a great list of suitable venues for your holiday parties? Do you use websites, magazines? How do you find the latest and suitable venues? Kimberly?
I ask my other peers what they've done and who they've worked with, and also through associations, the NCA, of course, and then I am on the events committee for our Uptown group, so just trying to really get connected and to have those resources, because I think word of mouth and somebody that has done something, it will just spur more ideas and then give you some contacts as well.
Terry?
I totally recommend your CVB. I work very closely with Destination DC, and you'll find that they'll come up with places that are unique, off the charts, different, off the path, hidden gems that you've never thought or probably would never be able to find within doing a Google search. So definitely utilizing your CVB.
Sheila?
And also, I would recommend connecting with different venues and going to see them. And then I keep notes on all the different venues. So when something comes up, I can give my clients options. I always like to do that, based on the size of the group and what they're looking for. Also, I find Minnesota Monthly Magazine very helpful with new things going on around the Twin Cities.
Tracy?
Okay, and I want to follow Sheila's comments. A lot of people read brochures. A lot of people read magazines. It's nice to read those things, but I would always put a warning out there that the footage or the square footage that you see quite often in those materials will include the entire space, and they're not thinking about the dance floor that you might want or how big a band space you need. So again, it's a one-on-one deal where you need to work with the client and figure out how much square footage do you really need. So just don't read the magazines.
Great. The next question I have here is several parts, and it's regarding event planning and kind of a ratios of how many hors d'oeuvres do you recommend per person, how many glasses of wine do you recommend per person, how many glasses of wine do you get per bottle, and how many glasses of wine in a champagne bottle. So knowing that, if we could have the panel talk about kind of the ratios that you use when planning some of these events. Sheila?
Okay, so as far as hors d'oeuvres go, typically at a cocktail party, 5 to 6 is a good number. Maybe if you end up having something catered in, you could have like 2 of them Butler passed. I always go for, let's say, a 4-hour event that you're saying, 1 4 to 5 ounce wine pour per hour is typically what you can count on. That's just, usually you don't. I always like to figure high. For one thing, wine keeps, so if you don't use your wine, I just had an event and we had a lot of extra wine, but that's okay because wine keeps and I love wine. And then I usually, with the pours that we do, like 5 glasses of wine per bottle. And champagne, I think it's a little bit less, but I'm not sure. I have 4 to 5, but somebody might have a better answer with the champagne.
Sheila? Oh, I'm sorry, that was Sheila. You need to put your hand down.
I did.
I know. Anyone else have any input on that question? The next question, do concierges like to have business cards on hand to give to clients when they ask for venue or various vendor recommendations? Heather?
Nice to have some, but in all reality, sometimes I go through and just toss things out because I get so much, and it takes up a lot of space. So it's nice to have a few, but not a few of each, but not a whole big stack, because otherwise your work area, your drawers, they're all being taken up with stuff that you may or may not need. So I pick and choose.
Tracy?
I might have been confused by the question, but my answer was we hope they do. Because in our case, we're usually working for the concierge or, for the affiliate, whoever it might be, and we're helping them look good. And so we're trying to stay behind the scenes, more likely. But if somebody does ask, we're hoping they're passing out cards or contact information.
Sheila?
So I do pass out cards, but I don't carry them all with me because I have so many different vendors that I can recommend. So before I meet either over the phone or talk with the client on what they're exactly looking for, and then that's when I come in and give them the cards. Usually I'm the one doing the research, so I will research, a vendor and more than one. If I'm looking for a caterer, I will research at least 3 caterers based on what they want. But I always am willing to give out cards for vendors, but I don't typically carry all of them because I just have such an enormous amount of vendors that I've used that it would be impossible to carry everything with me. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Great. And just wanted to give everyone a chance to, if you have a question for the panel, to type it in the chat section. Otherwise, at this time, I'll ask the final question that I have for the panel. Can you please give us one more tip or trick that you'd like to share with the group that you wish you'd known a little earlier in your career? Heather?
One thing that I have learned over the years is it doesn't take just one person to pull off an event or a party or anything. You're the person planning it, you're the main contact person, but you have a whole team of people helping you, and they want to help you, and they're more than happy to help you, but you need to communicate with them, have a plan, just let them know exactly what you want, when you want it, what you need. Just have all your details ready to go, and so there's no ambiguity. They're not standing there wondering what they need to do. And be appreciative and thank them and thank them and thank them, because without them, you couldn't do what you do.
Very true. Kimberly?
Well, mine kind of goes right along with that, was just really asking for assistance, and, I have my staff involved. I provide a full agenda. I try to make the agenda really fun but very direct on, asking people ahead of time and making sure that I'm putting people in positions and, kind of delegating that work but really getting them involved. So providing that agenda that also has a lot of fun things. And if there's something I can do for the event, for the team, we're big into, we just had a barbecue, so I had cowboy hats ordered in and bandanas for the whole staff. It made them stand out. They had a great time. We had some fun photos. So really getting them involved in their part. And making sure that they're comfortable and they have all the information ahead of time of what their role is in the event. And then the second part would just be marketing. Really have learned a lot about having to, you put out save the date, and then you follow up with a formal invitation, and you're putting ticklers out there on social media. And for me, just really getting that date ingrained so that there's no one saying, now, when was that? Or, sorry, I missed it. I want to make sure that everyone knows that they're invited to that event.
Terry?
I would say thinking out of the box and asking a lot of questions, because if you don't have a really good event planner and you get any resistance or anything that you had in your mind, unless you ask them, what has people done in the past, what can you do to help me work around your resistance, what can, by just saying what can or help me understand, you'll get a lot of people that, depending on your season and when you're booking your event, that they're extremely busy and they're only just going to say no and hang up. Or they're going to say, force you into their cookie cutter, and then you had an idea of something else. So just really continuing to ask and working through and communicating your desire, and yet that you're willing to be a little flexible, because if you are a little more flexible, you find that you create almost something that you never really thought of, and that could be even better than what you began with.
Sheila?
And I will go along with Terry. I was going to say research. Research is really important, and that's whether you're asking people, going online, but that is like one of the most important underused is resources for strategic planning of an event. And then that goes along also, I mentioned before, about always having a timeline, a checklist, and a budget, and staying on task with all of that. That will ensure that the event stays on task and things can be done ahead of time instead of scrambling the last minute. It's all about the planning. The day itself the execution is great, but everything is all about the planning and preparation for the event.
Tracy?
very excited about this question because it's been a big deal at our company, and I think it goes along really well with this webinar. And our advice, or my advice to our entire team right now in this day and age of texting and emailing is pick up the phone and call your clients. Talk to them in person. It is amazing what intonation does and what it means rather than a word just on a screen. Whether you're selling the program, whether you're confirming details, whether you're thanking the person, pick up the phone and talk to them if at all possible. And I think it makes a world of difference on both ends.
Jill.
Yeah, I would definitely say EA to Tracy's statement of picking up the phone. I do think that is really important. And I would just say just utilizing your local networks. I know we've already talked about it before, but you know, the NCA, your CVBs, and the research part is so important to be able to find the exact thing that your client is looking for the event.
Great. Well, thank you, panelists, for sharing all of your years of experience with us. I don't have any questions in yet, so just a reminder to those that participated today that there will be a survey coming out for your thoughts, to share your thoughts and feelings on this panel discussion. This was our first panel discussion for an NCA webinar, and any suggestions you have for future webinars or future panel discussions would be greatly appreciated.